Welcome to Backstage with the Brand, the podcast where we stage dive into all things advertising, marketing, and branded content. I'm your host, Andy Weedland, and today I'm joined by Karin Tanaka, who is brand advertising leader at VMware. How you doing, Karin?
Doing great, Andy. Thank you for having me.
I'm really stoked you're on the show. Let me share with our listeners your bio and the background for the show, and then we'll jump right into the question. So, Karin is an extremely talented and thoughtful B2B marketer where she leads VMware's global brand advertising program. She's creative and data driven and skilled at orchestrating multi-dimensional omni-channel brand campaigns. She's been at VMware for over 6 years. Before that, she was at Cisco Systems for over 6 years. She's Sun Microsystems, Adobe. She's worked with Apple and IBM. She's an original big tech OG. And she is a California bear. And I was going to say, what's Cornell, Karin? What's their mascot? Big Red?
Yeah, Big Red.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the
Wait.
mascot is. Oski is Cal.
Oh, wait. That's right. Cornell Bears. It. I was a Bears person all the way around.
Okay, so you're two bears in one.
Yep.
I did not know that. Now I do. So the agenda for the show today is like Karen's got a really interesting job. She works at VMware and it's B2B marketing, and she's going against the Goliaths in the industry. So I want to talk a little bit about this whole idea of David versus Goliath in marketing. I want to talk about some of the principles of B2B marketing and then the role of content in the media mix, and then end up with data, KPI, and measurement. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
So you've been doing this for a while. You've been doing big tech marketing for a long time. And I mentioned you were at Sun and Cisco and Adobe, and you've worked with Apple and Microsoft and IBM. By the way, before we get too far into it, do you ever get the chance to meet Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or any legends in the industry?
I did. I met Steve Jobs once. I don't think he ever knew my name, but yes.
Anything interesting? Did he say anything that like you stopped in your tracks and said, "Oh my God, this guy's a genius"?
Uh, well, you know, we were both at the Williams Sonoma shop, and it was around the holiday season, and I was in line behind him. However, I just thought it was a guy, and so I'm behind this guy, and I'm like, gosh, you look so familiar. I know I've seen you somewhere. Did you go to my high school? And he's like, well, where'd you go to high school? And I'm like, oh, in Durham, North Carolina. He said, no, I went to Cupertino High, and I said, oh, okay, well, maybe college. Did you go to Berkeley? No. I was like, what about Cornell? And he's like, no, I went to a place up in Oregon. I'm like, oh, okay. So, well, have a great holiday. He finishes checking out, heads out, waves bye. My husband comes up to me and he's like, oh my gosh, what were you talking to Steve Jobs about for all that time? I was like, what? So that was my encounter with.
You were you were hitting on Steve Jobs in front of your husband in a Williams Sonoma.
No,
Good gracious.
no, I was just chatting with. It was a long line. We were there for a long time. I was friendly. I was just chatting to this person and did not realize it was Steve Jobs.
Okay. All right. Well, that's your story. It's a good one. Okay, but let's get back to the challenge at hand. So you're going against these big companies, right? And with relatively, I mean, look, you spend tens of millions of dollars, and I don't know, it's a lot of money, I guess. But like when you're going against, Microsoft and Google and Amazon and Cisco, you really sort of need to take this challenger approach, what we used to call guerrilla marketing. So how are you doing that at VMware?
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, we have competitors who, in the same space who spend up to 10 times what we do. So we have to be very focused about our budget. And what we do is, we really try to go after our customers and prospects. So a lot of work with targeting lists, customer lists, and then building lookalike targeting based off of that. And so we look for the places where we know those customers are showing up and where those lookalikes are showing up. And we try to put the majority of our spend behind that.
That makes a lot of sense. I used to be in enterprise tech and I was terrible at it. But like you're a believer, you've been doing this. And in many ways, VMware and the cloud are transforming the world for the better. What are some examples of humans and societies living better lives because of cloud computing? Like, how are you helping? Like, you believe in what you're doing, and you've been doing it so long. Like, what's the benefit for humans?
Mm. I do believe in what I'm doing. I think what always attracted me to science and technology, and probably the technology arena, is you know, most technologists, they love a challenge. They love looking at the problem and trying to figure out how to solve it. And that takes a certain level of optimism. So you're working with people who are fairly optimistic and they're like, okay, this is what we're going to try, and they're also resilient. They are, willing to keep iterating on their solution. So that attracted me to technology in the beginning. And what I see us doing at VMware is very much really focused on supporting not only driving technology innovation that leads to improvements, for the world. Like right now, we're focused on a 2030 challenge where we're doing 30 different initiatives to try to, ensure that we're driving access to technology for the ecosystem, for the public. We're also trying to ensure that we are creating sustainable practices to support the development of green tech and a green supply chain. And in fact, VMware, which is based on virtualization and virtualized compute, storage, networking, etc., has actually removed quite a bit of carbon from the universe, basically from the globe over the 20 plus years that we've been in business. So what I see is that we as tool builders are creating tools that tool users, in that beautiful dynamic between the tool builder and the tool user, that tool users can go out and use to solve their tough challenges. So we, do impact all industries, whether that's financial services or retail or healthcare or manufacturing, space exploration, all of these things with the solutions that we bring to customers, the tools we give them to keep solving their toughest challenges.
Yeah. It's funny. We always say that we've never moved so fast. And yet, if that's true, and we're going to keep moving fast, this is the slowest we're ever going to move going forward.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering, you mentioned green initiatives and space exploration and health initiatives. Like, what other things do we have to look forward to? As a tool maker, what are the tool users doing to make the world a better place?
Yeah, we've got customers who are doing things like our telco customers. We have a lot of telco customers, and they are really focused on bringing connectivity to rural and remote locations, ensuring uptime of services, especially as more and more, for example, government services are now online, right? They have to ensure uptime and safety, secure data, because there's more and more personally identifiable data on these networks. So, they're trying to ensure that, and we work with a lot of government agencies who do the same. So, bringing that connectivity to everyone, enabling more people to be connected so they have more access to educational offerings as well as economic opportunities. I think about my own life where, my life was changed by the advent of desktop publishing in the 80s. I was a mom of a young baby and I was able to build a small business that became essentially, an agency in the first part of my career before I, joined the corporate world. And today there are lots of other people out there who are starting to be able to connect into the internet and, avail themselves of, all of this great learning and all of these different economic opportunities because now it's really accessible. So those are some of the things that we're doing. I think a couple of other things that our customers are doing, and we saw a rapid transformation around this during the pandemic, telemedicine, right? Delivering telemedicine and health education online, as well as just enabling people to work remotely in a way that wasn't done at scale previously. And, we've heard feedback from people who are physically challenged who are saying, wow, that whole shift in the mindset of being able to work remotely has given us greater access to the workplace and, really leveled the playing field. So all of these tools and the way we start using them really impacts the quality of life in lots of ways that we don't necessarily think about. But over time, as we see that feedback or hear that feedback, we realize, wow, this is really driving some important changes and improvements in the way we're all working or being.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like a Dickens novel. Like, it's the best of times and worst of times. And if you
Mm,
look at it from the worst of times, like we have a lot of challenges in this world, right? In terms of like global warming and equality and government and suspicion and data and privacy. And like, they're like, in some ways, like, it's like, what, and by the way, the country is completely split in two. And you're like, what the hell is happening? But for folks like us who have been in this for a while, everything is like auto magical. Like the fact that we have access to information and we can live our best lives remotely and we could make money and start businesses and follow our passions from our home office. Like in some ways, it's just absolutely incredible. Like and big tech can be demonized because of some really bad actors, but in general, the work that VMware and others do to enable people to pursue their dreams is just really incredible. So let's talk about branding and messaging because you're at brand advertising at VMware. And I think all brands think they have something interesting to say, but the best messages are simple and tight and they stay on point. How do you like, and I'm sure you like there's a bunch of people that are saying, hey, VMware does this. No, we do this, and we do this. And like you're gonna get like this really bloated message. And yet that to stick in the minds of marketers or consumers, whoever it is, they have to have a tight, highly impactful message. How do you sort of balance that conundrum?
It's challenging. It's challenging when you have a portfolio as both diverse. Well, it's not really diverse. It's a range. There's a lot in our portfolio. And it's not an easy portfolio to talk about because we're talking about, software and we're talking about, cloud software and services and that can get kind of complicated, when you're trying to explain it in an elevator or anywhere else, right? But what we're trying to do and what I think we've been evolving towards is trying to get closer to the ultimate value of what we're offering, right? Of what the brand and really our portfolio is offering. And I think we're at a place in our evolution where we're not talking as much about the what, but we're talking about the outcome, the thing it does for you as our customer. And in this pandemic, what we saw is that our customers were just really in a position where they had to transform extremely quickly their businesses. They needed to pivot to supporting remote workforces. They needed to rethink their business models. They needed to, get information out to customers and prospects in different ways. They needed to pivot away from, in-person events and in-person customer meetings to all online experiences. And so that really drove a lot of changes in their businesses and how they operated, and I think made them very aware. Like as we do a ton of customer visits and listening, and surveys and things like that, and what we were starting to see is that what they were really focused on is driving, really accelerating their digital transformation, really taking as many things online as possible, etc., but also building this core resilience like at the core of their business and using technology to do that. And so we really felt like there was a theme there. Like that's the value they saw in working with us, is that we were able to meet them wherever they were, right, in their journey, their technology journey, to get them where they needed to be in that moment. And that kind of lent itself to, like, I think that's our theme. So that is really where we are now, where we talk about our messages really this year in our new campaign, Welcome Change. And we're not saying that in any kind of glib way. What we're saying is, with the right sort of foundation, you can actually be in a position to welcome change. If you've got that core flexibility, you don't need to spend a lot of time worrying about, oh my gosh, can I meet this change? You can meet that change. And now you can put your focus on how you're going to respond to that.
I think it's a great tagline. And I went in the Wayback Machine. I looked at what you were saying pre-pandemic and then during the pandemic. And it was accurate, but it was kind of a mouthful. Like I wrote these down. VMware accelerates business transformation without disruption. That is absolutely true, but like it's not succinct, right?
Hmm.
Or VMware Tech enables you to meet customers where they are, where they were, and where they need to be. Yeah, but welcome change is this. I don't know. I find it very hopeful and optimistic and positive and empowering for your
Hmm.
customers. It doesn't exactly say what VMware does, but it definitely puts the spotlight on what your customers are doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the other thing that's really important, right? I think we're really in the customer's shoes, right? We're trying to be there beside them. We're here to help, and we know that this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure it out. You're trying to evolve into the next dimension. You touched earlier on all of the hopefulness and the positivity, as well as the dark side of technology. And I think what we're saying is that we know we're at an inflection point, technology wise, but also the global climate crisis, just the pressure of population and the extremes of impacts of economics for the haves and have nots, all of that, right? Big problems that technology has a part in helping to solve. So I think we're saying we're here for that, and we know that's what you're focused on, customers and all of the different ways that you're trying to solve for that, and we can help give you some tools. We know you're going to do great things with those, and we'll be here to take that feedback and make it easier, make it better, do what we can to help.
Let's talk basic advertising because like it doesn't matter what I think, right? I'm not like an IT decision maker or C-level person at a company that might buy VMware. So let's talk about the audience. Who are you trying to reach?
Right. We're trying to reach what we call C minus one, like VPs, senior decision makers in IT organizations. So typically that is the IT organization. Sometimes it's called the Chief Information Security Office organization, but primarily those senior decision makers.
And then the tagline is welcome change.
Yes.
And that is kind of thought provoking. It's like, yeah, that's cool. And I'm sure they've heard of VMware if they're C or C minus one or they're a tech decision maker. But like, what is the message that you want to get to them? It's like, get us in the consideration set, be aware of us, or like what's your initial go round in your advertising? What are you trying to have them remember?
We're trying to have them remember that as they're trying to navigate change, that we offer, and this is where it gets to be a tiny bit of a mouthful, but we offer app, cloud, security, and workspace solutions that can help them navigate that change, right? Give them that flexibility to navigate change. We meet them where they are and get them where they want to be. Now, what we find, and we've just come off of 2 weeks of in depth interviews with our target audience, and what we find is that it's actually useful for us to try to put a little smattering of that portfolio out there because if we were only to say, VMware Cloud, they might say, well, I'm using the Microsoft Cloud or I'm using the Google Cloud or I'm using AWS, but they're looking for different things at different times. If they feel like they've got their cloud strategy sort of locked and they're committed to a particular vendor, then they might be in the market though for a digital workspace solution. And so we find that having, a few things out there, a few messages when it comes to actually what's in our technology portfolio helps to catch their attention because they're very busy people typically. And what we're looking for is for them to say, "Oh, I know we're looking for a solution in this area. This sounds interesting. I'm going to go have my team explore it further."
Yeah. It's funny. This is at least when I came up at marketing and advertising in the 80s and the 90s. We all seem to be so hyper focused on we're better than this. And sometimes you'd call out your competitors, but you would basically say we're the number one. And the implication was we're better than.
Hmm.
But in this very complicated, intricate thing where you have competitors, but you may be working side by side with them at your clients, this better with message is probably more elegant. It's certainly truer. Like you're not better than
Hmm.
everybody. Like you're probably good at some things and others are better. You got to work with us anyways. Like that, I imagine that a better with message probably works for VMware.
Oh, absolutely. We like to say we're the Switzerland, sort of IT infrastructure companies. And that's because we, by design, are building things that work with everybody, right? So we're in probably 90% of the world's companies typically have been in their data centers, for the last 20 plus years as part of the software defined data center. But as everybody's been moving to the cloud, we have built solutions that are essentially a data center, our software stack that sits on everybody's cloud. So it's very interesting when we talk to people and we say, what clouds are you using, and they say Microsoft or AWS, we follow up with, are you using VMware Cloud on AWS? And often the answer is yes, but when they are first responding, they're saying, oh, we use AWS because to them it's very seamless, right?
Right.
So yeah, we take this approach of it doesn't matter. We give you this flexibility and choice so that you can run your business the way you need to. And we, any cloud, any app, any device.
So does the old, like, I don't know how long we've had this. I just remember in graduate school we studied the marketing funnel, and the goal was you find consumers, whether they're consumers or B2B prospects, and you go from awareness to consideration to intent to preference to purchase, and you move them down the funnel. Is that still appropriate given the complexities of today's market?
It is, although, we talk now with software as a service, it's a perpetual cycle, right? It's more like the infinite loop, right? But there's definitely a point where, like we find historically, if we have surveyed customers, if they purchase 3 or 4 of our solutions, they become very committed and they're building what we call that digital foundation, based on VMware, where they might have cloud technologies, they might be using our software or application development platform, they might be using our security solutions, they might be using our digital workspace solutions. But once they start to adopt, more than 2 or 3 of those products, they're really sort of choosing this VMware Digital Foundations. So that is really represented through more of that infinite cycle. But each purchase might be more like the funnel, right? Okay, they're now getting, they knew about the, vSphere in the data center, but now they're becoming aware of the Anywhere workspace. And, they're kind of progressing through that exploration and then purchasing, converting, becoming happy, hopefully customers. And then there's, this sort of like continuous buying of different services or sort of add-ons to that. So I think it's a combination of both, but we do think in terms of that initial awareness, there's still a place for making sure that you're building awareness at the right altitude, right? Before you start taking people deep into product specs or details, which, by the way, our audience loves to get to pretty quickly. They want to know the how, you know, and they don't have a lot of tolerance for marketing fluff.
Yeah, I get it. And so, given all of that, like, in the old days, it's like, well, we need TV for broad awareness. Like, does it even make sense for you guys?
TV for broad awareness? Actually, yeah, it does. We never ran TV until last year when everybody pivoted out of airports, no airport travel. We pulled our spend there and redirected it to TV and boom, saw a 16-point jump in our awareness with our target audience in the US.
So you ran regular linear TV, but like, did you do sports like golf and like, because when if I'm watching golf, you see IBM and you see Accenture and you see Microsoft and you see Amazon Cloud. Is that where you put your money?
No, we wish we could do that, but that's pricey stuff, right? So we really focused on, which is actually super solid as well, linear, mostly cable news, right? Some good shows. We're very selective about which shows we run with, and that's where we put our investment. We would love to do the sports programming, but that's again, our competitors who are spending ten times what we're spending are really in those places.
So you mentioned airport advertising, which always seems to be a go-to for IT companies. And some of it is okay, you have business travelers, sea levels, like it's a perfect place. I'm pretty convinced that when you see outdoor advertising near an airport, it's because an Asian or European IT company wants their executives to see their ads. I think it would be hard to argue. Like, at least this is just my opinion. You fly into SFO,
Mhm.
you drive out of there, and all of a sudden it's like Samsung and LG and Philips and like all these, like, because like these CEOs are traveling there and they want them to look up and say, "Oh, there it is." Am I being too skeptical? Is that too jaded? Like, in some ways, I bet it works, but in some ways, I bet it's just an ego buy.
That's a really good question. I think what we have felt and what data was telling us is that, and the data that we're using is really the airport data where airports say, okay, these are the business travelers traveling through our airport. And then we do a calculation around what percent of those are probably C level, IT decision makers. And as you know, a lot of business travelers are not just the CEOs, they are those folks in what we would call the senior sort of roles around decision making, and a lot of them actually in IT. If you travel up and down the West Coast, a lot of them are on those planes. So the thinking is, they'll be exposed to that when they're flying through SFO or San Jose. And I think there is value in that, but the numbers are a little bit harder to nail down and the data lags. So I would say that we have found, most recently that TV, we can get the data a little faster. We know that we're still targeting by proxy, meaning we're targeting an age group. We're targeting by contextual, targeting through the programs that we're running our ads with. And we're thinking, okay, we're probably reaching them through these channels. And then we test that by running a campaign tracker twice a year where we then, and hopefully after we've done one of these TV bursts where we can see, okay, yeah, this seems to be impacting them and they're telling us they're seeing it on TV, right? That kind of thing.
Backstage with the Brand is proudly sponsored by Nativo. Nativo is architecting the future of advertising with the world's most advanced platform for content. For advertisers, Nativo enables brand storytelling at scale. For publishers, Nativo provides monetization with seamless and engaging ad formats. Together, Nativo's platform creates a better form of advertising. To learn more, visit nativo.com.
Let's go from top of funnel to mid funnel. So, do
Okay.
you use content? And if so, what works and what doesn't?
We use a ton of content. Yeah, it's a good question. And again, we've just come off of a couple of weeks of qual, and we're getting ready to go into some quantitative testing. But what works is everything needs to be connected. And I can't stress that enough. We spend a lot of time, every single ad type that we have out there, we create a connected digital journey for. So if you see a TV ad, we know that you're not going to remember what URL we have, but we try to make it memorable, vmware.com/welcome. But if you just remember VMware and you Google on that, then you're going to go to the general VMware homepage, or you're going to go to our welcome homepage, and then you're going to have a journey that goes from the more general to the more specific. But let's say you see a digital banner and it's on Anywhere Workspaces, which is about our remote work solution. If you see that ad, you're expecting to go to something that pays that off. So we set up another journey where you go from that ad to a page about our Anywhere Workspace solutions and then try to get you as quickly as possible, knowing that you as an IT person probably want to get to the how a little quicker. We take you into that, more detailed information, and you can click around and decide what you want to spend time on. But we try to set up use cases so that it's interesting to you. If you see a piece of social, same thing. We need to think about exactly where that social ends up. If it's a customer story, it needs to end up on a customer article, and everything needs to be connected. So content marketing is huge for us. We spend a great amount of time, and my team is really hands on with that for sure.
That makes total sense, right? So, you use TV if you can, or outdoor airport for awareness and reach.
Mhm.
And then you funnel them down the funnel into what are the many areas that they're interested. And then immediately you start using stories and data and content to qualify them, engage them, delight them. Like, that makes perfect sense. I never heard of it said that way, but advertising is great to bring them in. But what are you going to convince someone using advertising? You really need to use content and stories and data and get out of the fluff and into the weeds about what these people are interested in, especially for B2B IT. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a very, highly skilled and skeptical, I might add, audience, right? And, like one of the stories and ads that we're running right now is Moderna, right? So we've got paid social, running a Moderna story that pushes to the Moderna article. And they're curious about it. Okay, yeah. Oh, and you have a part in that, so I want to understand what they did, and I want to understand what part VMware played in their story, and I want to make sure it's not opportunistic because that'll really turn me off, right?
Right.
So we really think about all of those things, and when we compare that article page with an article page, say on multi-cloud, where they feel like, hey, I know that stuff, right? when they get to the customer story, they're willing to read a lot of it, a lot of that text, because they want to know everything about it. They're very curious. They want to see if they can see themselves in it. Then they want to be taken to the product information that helped, those products that help the, Moderna in this case do what they're doing. But where they feel like they know or they've already got a solution, let's say multi-cloud, then they want to get very specific parts of that solution quicker if they're interested in it at all, right? They might say, we've decided on Microsoft, I'm not that interested, I'm not going to spend much time on that. But then they might see, oh, wait, you've got some specific security, point of view on multi-cloud. I'll go check that piece out. So we try to up level and call out those bits and pieces of things that, might be of interest to them. And I said this earlier, we call those use cases, like pulling out the use cases so that they can find that quickly and see if it applies to them.
Well, I love the idea of using real case studies of brands we know and admire that are topical, right? Because we're humans. I mean, like, well, look, they're IT professionals, but at the same time, and I went to your website and I saw Moderna is obviously top of mind, but also Zoom
Mhm.
and Tesla and SpaceX. And I love the one on MedFlight, by the way. But it's an interesting way of telling your story through clients via content. It's a great way to qualify potential, right? Before you get to the bits and bytes. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I do agree. I will have to say Tesla and SpaceX are customers, and you can Google that publicly and know that, but we don't have their stories on our website. I'm working on it, but not yet. Hopefully someday.
I get it. Okay. But I did see the Moderna and I did
Yes,
see the Zoom.
yes,
Those
and
definitely
Angel
made
Med
sense.
Flight. Hmm.
So let's talk about bottom of the funnel. So I am assuming that first party data makes the most sense. People that are your clients or you've worked with or they bought from you before, like letting them know what's going on is like step one. I assume that's
Yes,
not the majority, but probably most of your effort. Would
yes.
you agree? Is that right?
Yes, I think, customers and prospects. So again, that's where the lookalikes, to that first party data, comes in.
Right. And then this whole idea of next year, 2022, cookies are going away. I'm a big fan of that. It's probably going to make your life a lot harder. But what works and what's going away? And do you think it's an overall, this is a good thing for the industry? And how is VMware going to adapt without third party data?
Without cookie data, it's a good question. We're working on that now, and I don't have a clearly developed point of view on that because we're in the discovery period. I think that what it will come down to is, people opting in, right? As they create leads, as they become leads in our system. And I think what that's going to mean is that we're going to have to make sure we're delivering as much valuable content as possible to make them want to become leads. And whether that's, we gate more things or we offer them content that then makes them feel like, okay, I do want to sign up for this. And here's a high touch special selection of content that I'm getting as a result. It's kind of going back to some of the things that we've done, we've all done in the past, but probably having to really ramp that up. And then again, there's going to be different ways that people find to identify parties online. But I personally, I think it's a really good thing to solve for. I think that personal privacy and protection is important, right? So if we can find a way to do that in the world, I think it would be good.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I've heard you say in the past, you have this saying brand to demand. And so you sort of believe in sort of the marketing funnel, and then you have the saying brand to demand.
Hmm.
Do you do sophisticated media mix modeling? Because you're doing a bunch of things. You're doing TV, you're doing airport, you're doing outdoor, you're doing content, you're doing banners, you're doing first party data. I assume you're using LinkedIn for all this stuff. And it sounds like you have these retreats where it's like 2 weeks qual and we're going to dig in and we're going to figure out what works. What is that like to sort of get a handle on media mix modeling?
Hmm.
Because I think it's really hard and I think it changes as soon as you get it figured out. But
Hmm.
tell me about, you know, your
Yeah.
VMware's efforts in that.
Yeah, I think it's part of the fun of this, right? It's sort of like turning all the dials, figuring out the right thing. And so we talk about it as being omnichannel. And at the brand awareness end, we use all the things. We use, some airport, TV now, digital banners, paid social, native content, radio, podcasts. And when we talk brand to demand, what we're trying to do is connect what we're doing at the awareness end, right, into what's happening at the demand gen and into that whole sort of flow. So, for example, we're piloting something right now where we've gone back and we've looked at all of our accounts, and we're trying to target specifically those accounts that are dormant or inactive, starting with our brand awareness. So try to wake them up like, okay, hey, here's some interesting stuff on any one of these channels that might re-engage you. Then as we see those accounts start to wake up and re-engage, we can see what they're responding to. Like on our ad landing pages, as I said earlier, we do a lot of content marketing. We have 5 key areas of our portfolio. So as those accounts start to show up and show an interest in a particular area of the portfolio, we can then start nurturing them with more information that is of interest to them, right? Okay, you're really interested in what we're doing in terms of, app development. Let us give you more information about that and see what's resonating. As you start to move deeper into the funnel, we add in the tactic of email, where we're starting to reach out to people who have become leads and nurture them in a little bit more personalized way. But we try to be hands off with that, at the top of the funnel. We want them to feel like they can come look around, sort of engage with what they want. So I think in terms of media mix, we're always, as we're going through, right, every few couple of weeks, we're taking a look and seeing like what's performing well, at least at the brand awareness end, and what do we need to optimize. Okay, we stop running maybe this social or this creative and we swap in something that maybe is a little bit more engaging. Maybe we dial up or down the mix. About a year ago, we decided we just weren't going to be on Facebook anymore, that we would really focus on LinkedIn, because we took a look and saw what kinds of engagements are we getting, and we just weren't seeing our audience on Facebook. So we decided, okay, let's put that investment in LinkedIn. It's a little pricier, but it's getting us more directly to the people we need to reach. So we're always doing that kind of evaluation.
Was this, God, it seems like ages ago. Was this driven or instigated by, remember Facebook had all those issues and a lot of big brands said, okay, we're taking a hiatus, and they went off Facebook for a month, and then most of them went back. Like if you're a consumer marketing company, what are you not going to use Facebook? But for VMware, like, was it precipitated by that boycott of Facebook, or did you just look at the data and say, no, LinkedIn makes more sense and we have limited budget, we're going to put it where it works?
Yeah, the boycott happened last year. No, we actually made the decision the second half of the previous year, so second half of 2019, where we'd looked at the data. And we also, our parent company, Dell, who will be spinning out from, in a few months here, I went back to them. I have, partners on that side, and we kind of talk over best practices. And I was like, I'm not seeing it on Facebook. What about you guys? And they were like, yeah, not so much. Now, Facebook is great for consumer, but for what we needed to do, not so much. So that's the reason why we made the decision to pivot away. And in terms of Twitter, we dabbled last year in a Twitter sponsorship on tech channels, and that seemed to work pretty well. And we'll probably try something again this year. But we've been really happy with the performance of things on LinkedIn, where we know who we're trying to reach and we can find them there. So it's been great for that.
Yeah. Let me ask you sort of a final question. You're very thoughtful and you're data driven, and you're very facile with this omni-channel approach. Is there anything that surprised you? Maybe not even just at VMware, but look at Sun or at Cisco, where you thought for sure this was going to be a winner, or this channel was going to work, or this messaging was going to work, and then the data showed you or consumers told you, nah, because we're always surprised. I mean, we think we know what we're doing, and then we optimize based on the data. But was there ever something that just sort of slapped you in the face and said, Karen, you were wrong?
Besides my teenager, I mean, who's no longer a teenager. And no, she never slapped me. Um, uh, I'm just trying
Okay,
to.
because that's a great story.
Yeah, I think there are lots of little moments like that, right? Because it's an ongoing, and I'm not trying to dodge your question, but I think it's an ongoing sort of conversation, right? Which is really how I look at it. And things like 3 years ago, we would put material out there, and our senior ITDM audience would be like, they wanted long form content, and some of our longest form content had the most engagement. And we still see really great engagement with our content, but more recently, people are saying almost to the person, just give me a video. I want a video really quickly, like at the top. If it's got a video, I'm going to watch it. And then I'm going to decide if I want to spend any more time with it. So, even though we've been talking for a long time about the importance of video, it's really a thing now, right? I think the other thing that I was seeing the shift to and was surprised at how rapidly it was moving was the shift to connected TV, right, away from linear. And so we're investing in both linear and connected, but that's a place where people show up. About our campaigns personally, I think I was surprised that people didn't embrace the idea of this digital foundation, which seemed to me like a perfect encapsulation of, what are all these things that make up your IT really? Why wouldn't you talk about your digital foundation internally at every single company? And I think some people were more like, well, what is this digital foundation? It's just another buzzword. And what's funny is that I don't think it really caught on, but now I think people sort of talk about it as just like, yeah, we're building this sort of digital foundation with, cloud and this and that. And I don't know that they seek it out per se, but they get what it means. And so I think one always has to be very careful about that you are speaking the language of your audience so that they're not scratching their heads like, what do you mean by this? You know?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a surprise for me too. Being in this a long time, the idea that videos on mobile video, social mobile video, is a hard trend,
Mhm.
but especially mobile video that people are would prefer to watch a video rather than to look at an infographic or read something uh, text heavy. I guess it's good for advertisers because advertisers prefer sight, sound, and motion. If you have a lot of video content, then you could serve pre-roll, but pre-roll's the devil's work. So I don't know. It's never a dull moment, Karen. It's really never a dull moment. But I agree with you. The fact that consumers seem to prefer video is a surprise.
Yeah. And to your point, are willing to kind of have that video, be just sort of subtitled or whatever, not necessarily as deep as it might be. But I think what I'm seeing is that they're using it as a sorting thing. Like, okay, if there's something pithy here, then I'll have my team go investigate further, or maybe I'll do some reading, and click in a little bit more. I'll use it to determine if it's worth my time, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So, Karen, great job. The name of this podcast is Backstage with the Brand. And so I need to ask you these questions that are required of every guest. Have you ever been backstage at a concert?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Well, you're backstage on a podcast. I guess that sort of counts. What was your first concert or best concert?
My first concert was I'm really going to date myself with this. Was Gordon Lightfoot when I was a kid. My parents took us to see Gordon Lightfoot in concert.
What are you, Canadian or something?
No.
No, you just, it was the wreck of the something, or yeah, I mean,
Edmund
we were a big Gordon Lightfoot
Fitzgerald. I
family
could
as
sing it
well.
for you almost word for
Yes,
word.
I've got friends who are really devoted to that song. Okay, but that you've had to have been to a better concert since then, though, right?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, I would
Anything
say,
recent? I guess no. We've had COVID. Nobody's been to a concert in years, but
I'm not a
yeah,
big concert goer myself, although I love music. But I would say, this is probably not anything anybody can relate to. But I was in choir for many years in high school, and in high school, all of these choral groups got together and performed. And you have never had an experience until you've had the experience of singing five-part harmony with thousands of people. It was truly one of the most memorable experiences I've ever had in my whole entire life.
Well, that's probably the most memorable answer. I was not expecting that. That was surprising, and I agree with you. That's probably really insane. Listen to a five-part harmony with thousands of people.
It was.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Karen. Well, look, thank you very much. Hopefully, if you're a B2B marketer interested in advertising and want to dive into a real David Goliath story, Karin Tanaka just told a great one. So thank you, Karin. Really appreciate it.
Gosh, thank you, Andy. Thanks so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on Backstage with the Brand. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and maybe learned a little something. If you liked today's episode, please consider sharing with a friend, rating the segment, or subscribing to Backstage with the Brand. Special thanks to our sponsor, Nativo, as they architect the future of advertising. Thanks for listening, and remember, no matter where you go, there you are.